No one had ever seen the alien princess's face that no one dared. Every suitor who tried to bond with her, without her permission, went mad or died. Her people said she was cursed. Others said her face held a kind of power the mind could not handle. But she was also their last hope for peace. The war between her people, the Orothians, and the rest of the galaxy had left many worlds in ruins. Now, to stop more destruction, the Orothians offered their princess in a soul bond. But only if someone was brave enough to bond with her. Without ever seeing her face, no one stepped forward until the human did. His name was Commander Elian Stone, a man with scars not just on his body, but deep inside. A man who had lost everything. In the war, his home, his brother, his reason to keep fighting. Now he stood in the center of the great bonding hall, where a circle of flames lit the room with golden fire. Across from him sat the princess. She wore a silver veil that shimmered like moonlight. Her hands rested on her knees. Her eyes could not be seen. Her face was hidden, her body still as stone. Silence filled the room. The leaders of the Orothians stood around the edge of the chamber, watching. None believed the human would last more. Then a moment, a female elder stepped forward and said, "Once the bond begins, there is no going back. You may see things that break your mind. If she rejects you, your soul will tear." Elian nodded once, understood. She will not speak. She cannot show herself. You must offer your hand and your trust. Again, Elian gave no words. He only stepped forward. The heat from the flames licked his skin as he crossed the circle. His boots echoed on the black stone floor. When he reached her, he knelt down eye to eye level with the veiled figure. "I don't know your name," he said gently, "but if you need someone who won't run from the dark, I'm here." He held out his hand. A long silence followed. The Orothians tensed. A few turned their heads. Others watched, ready for the human to collapse like the others. But then, something strange happened. Her hand moved. She placed it softly in his dot, and then his mind went dark. Not from pain, but from silence. Everything stopped, his breath, his heartbeat, even time. For a long moment, he floated in darkness. And then, slowly, a voice entered his thoughts. It wasn't harsh. It wasn't loud. It was like warm wind on a frozen lake. "You didn't ask to see me," the voice whispered. "You didn't flinch. You didn't fear. Why?" Elian's thoughts replied on their own. "Because I've seen too much fear. I don't need to see your face to know your heart." The flames around the chamber shifted. The silver veil shimmered slightly, and though her face stayed hidden, something unseen passed between them, a pulse. A light, a bridge. Outside the circle, the elders looked at each other in disbelief. "He's not screaming," one muttered. "He should be on the floor." But Elian wasn't. He was smiling, just a little. The bond was forming. Inside Elian's mind, images began to flow, memories not his own. A child running through purple grass. A mother crying behind a sealed door. A lonely room filled with books written in symbols he didn't know. And the same silver veil. Always watching, she had been alone for a long time. Suddenly, her hand pulled away. The bond broke. Elian gasped and opened his eyes. His body was shaking. His chest hurt. But he was alive. The princess stood, her back to the council. Her voice echoed in the room, not from her mouth, but through the air like a song inside water. "He is not broken," she said. "He is chosen." The flames died out. The veil still hid her face. But for the first time, her people didn't look away from her in fear. They looked at the human. The one who didn't run, the one who reached out, the one who didn't look, but saw her anyway. That night, Elian didn't sleep. He fell. The moment his head touched the soft bed inside the guest quarters of the Orothian palace, the world around him faded not into rest, but into something stranger. Something other. He was no longer in the room. He stood barefoot in a forest with twin moons hanging low in the sky. The trees were tall and blue, their leaves glowing softly like lanterns. The wind whispered, but it spoke in a language he didn't know. It wasn't Earth. It wasn't a dream. He could feel the dirt under his feet, the cold in the air, the smell of salt and fire, and then he heard it, a lullaby. Soft and sad. A child's voice humming. He followed it as he moved between the glowing trees. He saw glimpses, flashes of memory that didn't belong to him. A little girl running barefoot, laughing, chasing lightbugs through the woods. A young woman kneeling at a tomb made of white stone, pressing her forehead to it. A silver veil hanging from a tree branch fluttering in the wind like it had been forgotten. Elian whispered, "Is this you?" The air answered with silence. Then suddenly she was there. Not the princess as he had seen her, silent and veiled, but a version of her younger, freer, eyes wide with wonder. She turned to face him, but even in the dream, her face blurred like water on glass. He couldn't see her, not fully. "This place," her voice said from behind him, "was my only freedom." Elian spun. She stood there, older now, the veil returned. "Before the bond, I came here in dreams, but now you're in it too." Elian tried to walk closer, but the space between them never shortened. Like the forest itself was protecting her. "Why show me this?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, the dream shifted, sharp and fast. Now he stood in a grand hall, filled with lights and voices. Alien nobles in robes of fire and gold surrounded a tall throne. Upon it sat a man with metal eyes. "The first suitor," her voice whispered. "The one who demanded to see." The memory played out. The man shouted, "Unveil yourself. I will not bond with a mask." The princess stood in front of him, calm. Still, she warned him, "This is not a mask. It is mercy." He reached forward, tore the veil away, and then screams. Man fell to his knees, his body twisted. His eyes burned black. His voice cracked into silence. He died on the spot. Elian's breath caught. The memory faded. Now they were back in the forest. The princess stood near a quiet stream, staring down at her reflection. "They said I cursed him, that my face brings madness." Elian walked to the edge of the stream, staying still beside her. "Did you?" he asked softly. She turned her head just slightly toward him, the veil fluttering with dream wind. "No, I only showed him the truth, but truth without trust is poison." Elian lowered his gaze. "Why me then? Why let me in?" She didn't reply with words. Instead, she reached out slowly and touched his arm. The dream burned with sudden light. Elian's eyes flew open. He was back in his room, gasping. His heart thundered in his chest. Sweat covered his skin, but that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was his arm. Across it glowed a faint blue pattern, lines and shapes that looked like runes, curling across his skin like gentle fire. He touched them. They pulsed beneath his fingers, not pain, not sickness, but something alive. The door burst open. 2 Arilthian guards rushed in. Behind them stood a healer, her face pale as she stared at the marks. "Impossible," she whispered. "He's been marked. That only happens after a sacred bond, and not even with full contact." Elian stood up, shaking. "What does it mean?" The healer stepped back in awe. "It means she let you into her dream. No outsider has ever seen her past. No outsider has ever survived it." Elian looked down at the glowing symbols. And for the first time in years, he felt more alive than broken. The markings on Elian's arm would not fade. Even after 2 days, they still glowed faintly, pulsing with every beat of his heart. The Arilthian palace buzzed with fear. Elders whispered in corners. Guards avoided his eyes. Servants refused to enter his room. They said the marks were sacred. They said he had crossed a line no outsider should cross. And now, the council wanted answers. Elian stood inside a tall chamber of black stone, surrounded by a ring of 12 Orilthian elders. The princess was not present, only her chair empty and veiled. A tall elder with golden eyes stepped forward. "Human," he said, "your bonding mark has changed shape. It does not match any record. This is dangerous." Elian kept his voice calm. "She allowed me into her memories. She chose me." Another elder hissed, "You claim the dream was mutual, but we know her power. Her dreams pull. They break minds. If she showed you too much, you may be unstable." "I'm not unstable," Elian said. "I'm awake." That answer didn't help. The council argued among themselves in their ancient tongue, words sharp and fast. One of them, an older woman with deep scars, looked at Elian with something close to pity. Then she said, "Do you want to know why she wears the veil, human?" Elian crossed his arms. "I've already seen enough to know why." "No," she said coldly. "You've only seen the dream. The real reason is older than this palace, older than the war." She stepped forward, holding up a small black box. "This," she said, "is the Mask of Thorns." She opened it. Inside was a strange device, thin silver lines wrapped in sharp glass. Woven into a spider-like shape, it was made for her. The elder continued, "When she was a child, her power was too strong. The veil she wears is not cloth. It's grown from this mask. It stops her from feeling too much, seeing too much, burning others alive just by being known." Elian looked at it, then back at her. "So, she's not cursed," he said. "She's caged." The room fell silent. Then for the first time in 3 days the princess spoke, not aloud, but into every mind in the room. "You fear what you do not understand. He does not. That is why I let him in." Gasps filled the chamber. She stepped out. From the shadows, still veiled, still silent on the outside, but her presence shook the room like a slow quake under their feet. "I gave him part of me, and he lived. That has not happened before. Perhaps your fear has kept me in chains. Perhaps your stories have made me a monster." One of the elders trembled. "If you remove the veil, the palace will fall. The stars may shift." She turned her head toward Elian. "Would you ask me to remove it, human?" Elian met her hidden gaze without blinking. "No," he said quietly. "But if you ever wanted to, I wouldn't run." Something invisible passed between them again. A connection deeper than thought, more ancient than language. Then she turned away. "I am tired," her voice echoed. "I will return to the chamber." The council said nothing as she left, but Elian was not allowed to follow. Later that night, Elian sat alone in his room, watching the runes on his arm pulse in the dark. He could feel her far away but present. Sad, quiet. Then pain. A sharp burn ran through his chest. He fell to his knees and saw it. New mark forming over his heart, glowing in the same silver-blue light. A second rune, a message. He closed his eyes and heard her voice again. "They fear you now, Elian, because you saw me without needing to see me. And that makes you dangerous to them," he whispered back. "Why?" "Because if you can love a girl behind a veil, others might too." That night, a guard, one of the council's own, entered Elian's room while he slept. He looked at the mark and tried to remove it with a blade. But the moment the metal touched Elian's skin, the mark flared to life and burned the guard. Backward, screaming, he was found with his eyes burned black. The council blamed Elian, but the mark was no longer just a symbol. It was a shield. And a message to everyone. This bond would not break. Not by force. Not by fear. Not even by death. Elian's body was changing. He could feel it beneath the skin, in his breath, in the way light bent differently around his hands. Something inside him had awakened since the bond. It started small. The runes on his arm would glow when he felt strong emotions, sadness, anger, love. At first they were warm. Now they pulsed like fire. Then came the dreams, not visions like before, but memories that were not his. He began hearing whispers when no one was speaking, and the whispers weren't human. They were Orilthian. He understood them, even though he had never learned the language. On the fourth day after the bonding, Elian walked past two alien guards in the palace. They whispered behind his back, not knowing he understood. His veins hum with her light. He shouldn't still be alive. He isn't just alive. He's becoming something else. That night, Elian stared at himself in the mirror. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. And his blood, it was no longer red. It shimmered silver beneath the skin. Across the palace, the princess stood alone in the starlit garden. Flowers that only bloomed for royalty opened around her as she reached up, touching her veil. "He's changing," she whispered into the wind. "I gave too much of myself. I never meant for this." A voice behind her. "You always knew what? You were my daughter." It was her mother, the Dowager Queen, long silent, long exiled to shadows. The queen stepped into the moonlight, her eyes old and hard. "No one survives your soul bond. And now this human is glowing with power meant for gods. Do you know what you've done?" The princess didn't answer. She simply said, "He trusted me." The queen spat. "Then he's a fool." Elian was summoned again to the council. This time, he entered with guards at his side, not as a guest, but as a threat. "Sit," one elder commanded. Elian didn't sit. "What is happening to me?" he asked instead. "Tell me the truth." The same elder said, "You are being rewritten. Her energy is changing your cells. You will not stay human much longer." "I didn't ask for this," Elian said. "No," the elder replied. "But she gave it freely. That's what makes it worse." Another counselor added, "In our history, when one being carries the bond too far, it leads to collapse. The last time this happened, it tore a planet in half." Elian's hands clenched. "So what do you want me to do? Break the bond?" "No," said the eldest among them. "We want you gone, before your change becomes permanent." They handed him a ship assignment, an order to leave Orilthian space, to be exiled from the one person who truly saw him. He said nothing, but inside, the fire burned hotter than ever. That night, the princess appeared in his quarters without a word, without guards, still veiled, still powerful. Elian stood frozen as she reached out and placed her hand over his heart, where the new rune had formed. "They're afraid," she whispered. He nodded. "Of you?" "No," she replied. "Of us." Elian breathed slowly. "I can feel everything now. Your thoughts, your memories, even your sorrow. It's like I've lived your whole life in pieces." She sat down beside him on the floor. The stars above shimmered through the skylight. "I didn't mean to change you." "But you did," Elian replied. "And I'm not sure I want to go back. Even if it kills you?" He turned toward her. His voice was steady. "No one ever gave me anything real before. If this is what it means to truly connect with someone, then let it burn." Later, alone, Elian stood under the stars, shirtless, arms glowing, his breath clouded silver. And in his mind, her voice echoed like music and warning all at once. "If you stay, you may lose your form, your species, even your name." He looked at the glowing city, then at his hands. "Then I'll make a new name," he whispered, "one that holds both of us." And somewhere deep in the heart of the planet, the veil trembled, not from fear, but from love, and something far more dangerous, willing transformation. There was a room in the palace no one spoke about, a place older than the council, older than the wars, older even than the bond rituals themselves. It was called the mirror room. It had no doors, no guards, only a silent passage hidden behind, an archway that glowed when touched by bonded hands. No one entered it lightly. It did not show reflections. It showed truth. The council called Elian at sunrise. They had run out of arguments. Their laws had failed to contain the bond. And now something ancient had been awakened inside the human. He could hear the thoughts of Orothians in the next room, sense emotions through walls. Sometimes when he focused, the air bent around him. They were afraid, but one law still remained, the mirror test. Only once in Orilthian history had a foreigner survived it, and that soul had gone blind soon after. Elian stood before the ancient archway. The princess waited at his side, silent beneath her veil. "This room," she said, "does not lie." He nodded once. "Good, neither do I." She paused. "But truth hurts. It may break you." He looked at her softly. "Then break me." The Kamta arch lit up with blue flame as their hands touched it together, and the door opened. The mirror room was silent. No wind, no sound, no shadows. Only white stone, a single silver pool in the center, and a great curved mirror that stood tall and untouched, like it had been waiting centuries for someone to come. The moment they stepped in, everything changed. Ian gasped. He wasn't alone. In the reflection, he saw himself, but not as he was. He saw a version of himself with silver eyes, glowing marks all over his body, and strange armor that pulsed with alien light. His future self? His soul? He didn't know. He reached out. His reflection did too. And then something stranger happened. The princess stepped beside him, but in the mirror she was not there. Her reflection was missing. Just empty air. Elian blinked. "Where is she?" The princess whispered behind him. "The mirror shows only truth. I have no reflection." Elian turned, confused. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer, but then she stepped forward, slowly, carefully, and the mirror cracked. Not shattered. Just a single line, from top to bottom. Like it was holding back a scream. Suddenly, her voice echoed in his head, not a whisper this time, but a sharp cry. "This is what I feared. That I am only real when someone else believes I am." Elian stepped between her and the mirror. He stood tall, chest rising, then in front of everyone before the mirror, the room, and the bond that tied them. He turned to face her and said, "I see you." The mirror pulsed. The room shook. The reflection of the room turned gold. And then, for just 1 second, her reflection appeared. A girl with deep, endless eyes, hair like woven night. Tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Her face was not terrible. It was beautiful, but not in the way of flawless skin or perfect lines. It was beautiful like the stars after war, like peace after grief, like hope after centuries of silence. And then it was gone. The mirror turned black. The room stilled. The test was over. When they exited the chamber, the council stood waiting. The queen herself had come. One of the elders spoke softly, his voice trembling. "What did the mirror show you, human?" Elian looked at the princess. Then said calmly, "Myself." "And the princess?" He smiled faintly. "She doesn't need a reflection to be real." The council fell into silence, but the queen's gaze narrowed. "You love her," she said. Not as a question, but a warning. Elian looked her in the eye. "I know her." That night, the mirror cracked again, not in the room, but in the minds of the people. The whispers began to shift. What if she's not cursed? What if he really saw her? What if she can be loved and the bond is true? And somewhere deep inside the palace walls, the princess sat alone, hand over her chest, feeling something she had never known before. Not power, fear, but the warmth of being seen. Truly. Finally. Completely. The bond was no longer just a connection. It was a storm, a fire spreading through the palace walls, through ancient laws, and through the minds of those who had once feared her. The princess felt it first late in the night as she stood before her window watching the twin moons rise. Her heart beat faster now, not because of fear, but because of something new. Longing, danger, in love. But love, for her kind, was not safe. It was not even allowed. The council met behind locked doors. The queen stood with them, her face cold and unmoved. Elian must be removed, one of the elders said. He's causing the people to question centuries of truth. Another added, the palace staff has begun whispering. Some say they want to see her face. Some say the curse was a lie. The queen raised one hand to silence them, then spoke. With sharpness, if the veil breaks, the world breaks with it. You know what happened to her father. What her power did. No one argued, they remembered, but Elian didn't care about old fears. He cared about her. He stood at the gate of the upper garden, where she often went when she couldn't breathe. Tonight she was there. And this time she was waiting for him. Still. Veiled. Still guarded by silence. He stepped close, not touching her, just standing near enough for their thoughts to meet. You've changed me, he said. But I don't think it's your fault. I didn't mean to, she replied softly. Do you regret it? A long pause. Then, no. Then why are you trembling? Her hands, even under the veil, were shaking. Because I want to remove it, she whispered. And I'm terrified. Why? Because if you see me and turn away, I will shatter. Elian looked at her, his voice calm, solid as stone. Then wait until you believe I won't. But fate didn't wait. That very night, war returned. A signal rang through the city, distant ships breaking orbit. Enemy forces heading toward the capital. One of the outer moons had fallen. An old enemy of the Oralthians, the Vasker clans, had broken the peace. The people panicked, and they blamed her. She opened the bond. Her emotions weakened the veil. It's her fault. They sensed the breach. The palace gates were closed. The queen ordered the princess to her chamber. Do not leave until the threat is over, she said, but the princess no longer obeyed fear. She found Elian and said 3 words she had never dared before. I need you. He followed her to a high balcony overlooking the city. From there, they could see the fire rising in the distance. Enemy ships entering the sky. Panic below. She stood before him, her breath shaking. They will take me if I don't stop this. How? By using what I've always feared. She reached up, hands trembling, veil fluttering, and she said, they say I'll burn the world if I show my face. But right now, maybe it's the only way to save it. Elian stepped closer, put his hand on hers. Then let me see. You're not afraid? No, he said. I've been afraid of many things. But never you. She gasped. Then slowly. She lifted the veil. Time seemed to stop. Not a single sound in the air. The moon seemed to freeze in the sky. And there, beneath the veil, was not a monster, not a god, not a curse, but a woman. Her skin shimmered like starlight. Her eyes endless. Galaxies wrapped in sorrow. And her face unimaginably beautiful. But not because of perfection. Because of everything it had carried. Pain, hope, isolation, love. She expected him to look away. To go blind. To scream. But instead, Elian stepped forward. Tears filled his eyes, and he smiled. You're not cursed. You're the light they've been hiding. And then the firestorm began. The veil, once removed, unleashed a wave of pure energy, not destruction, but emotion. Every person in the city felt it, all at once. They felt her. The loneliness. The silence. The years behind the mask. And the warmth of being loved. The invasion halted. Enemy ships turned back. Even they felt it. A force they could not explain. Not a weapon, but something stronger. Compassion. As the light faded, she collapsed. Elian caught her in his arms, still glowing faintly from the bond. You gave them peace, he whispered. I gave them truth, she said, breathing slowly. Finally, and for the first time in her life, she slept without the veil. She woke up in his arms. For the first time in her life, the princess had slept without the veil. And the world was still standing. The city had not burned. The sky had not cracked. No one had gone mad. Instead, people were waiting outside the palace walls. Not with weapons. But with candles. And quiet. The bond between her and Elian had reached its final stage. Not a spark, not a mark, but emerging, where one soul didn't dominate the other, but danced with it. They could hear each other's thoughts without speaking, feel each other's breath across any distance, see what the other feared, hoped, and remembered. But with this deep connection came a final trial. It wasn't political. It wasn't physical. It was something worse. The galaxy had taken notice. Ships from other empires arrived in orbit, not to fight, but to study, to observe, to question. What are they now? The galaxy asked. Is he still human? Is she still Orilthian? Is this union legal? But love does not care for laws written by fear. The council offered them a choice: leave together, beyond Orilthian space, and never return, or stay and let the bond be ripped out by force using ancient machines that hadn't been used in centuries. Painful, risky, maybe fatal. Elian took her hand. She looked up at him. Quiet. We don't have to fight, she whispered. We don't, he replied. But maybe we were born to finish the fight someone else started. She smiled, tired. And how do we win? By loving each other louder than they fear us. In the main square of the capital city, a crowd gathered. Cameras from across the stars broadcasted dozens of worlds. The princess walked beside Elian, no veil, head high. Her markings glowed softly, matching his. Together, they stepped onto the old stone platform, the place where her ancestors had once issued death sentences to those who broke bond law. Elian held her hand tightly, then he spoke. I was not chosen by her face. I never saw it. I stepped forward because I believed someone behind a mask could still hold a heart. And I was right. A murmur passed through the crowd. Then silence. She stepped forward, voice calm, strong. For generations you feared what I might become. You buried me under a veil, but I was never the danger. Fear was. This human chose me without seeing me. And through him, I chose myself. They turned to leave, but a voice cried out, wait. It was the Dowager Queen. She looked older than ever, tired, but her eyes were wet. Do you love him? The princess nodded. I always did. Then go, the queen said, and never look back. The crowd parted. Some bowed, some reached out their hands. One child whispered, she's not cursed. Another said, she's like us. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They walked out of the city and into the forest where the dream had once begun, where two moons watched silently, where a veil had first fluttered in the branches. There, they sat together under the stars. Elian pressed his hand to hers. Are you afraid now? He asked. She shook her head, smiling through quiet tears. No, she whispered. Because even if you had never seen my face, you already saw me. The night wrapped around them like a warm blanket. No titles. No orders. No war. Just two souls, once broken, now whole. Bound by something no mirror could show. Something unseen, but eternal.